What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports 2 Hine Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bengals 0-2 start. We're going to be talking about the New York Jets upcoming week. The Bengals play the Jets this upcoming Sunday. The Bengals Week 1 loss to the Steelers. The Bengals Week 2 loss to the Cowboys. Both those games were absolutely horrible. And joining me today's episode to talk about this is Frank Laplaca, host of the Unofficial Bengals podcast. How you doing today, Frank?
All right, Jordan. Great to talk to you again, my friend.
Really glad you're able to join the show. I've not been able to do a video, in a couple of weeks, since the season has started. And to say that there is a lot to talk about in a bad way is an understatement. Nothing has went right for the Bengals so far in the first 2 weeks. Like I said, I've not been able to do a video since the season started. Going to kind of, slightly talk about the Steelers game. Obviously the Steelers defeated us 23-20 in overtime. And like I said, kind of talking about before the show, I wasn't shocked the Bengals lost at all. I was on your show a couple weeks ago. We both talked about there was a realistic chance that Bengals were going to lose to the Steelers. The Steelers are the Steelers. They're always going to be good. No matter how much you hate them, they're always going to be good. We have to accept that. And, last season, heading into last season, the Buffalo Bills were Super Bowl contenders. Week 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers went into Buffalo and upset the Bills. And this is basically what just happened a week or so ago. In Week 1 when the Steelers beat the Bengals. But I've seen so many people say, oh, well, the Steelers, they didn't play that good. Their offense was horrible. Their defense was good, but their offense was horrible. The Bengals had 5 turnovers, and they only lost by 3 points. I hate that excuse. We only lost. We still lost. Like, you could say, oh, we only lost by 1 point or whatever. The point of the matter is we lost, and we have to accept that. Like, to me, it infuriates me so much. I don't try to be biased. I tell stuff how it is. But the Bengals absolutely sucked. And the Steelers' offense played really good. I don't care what people say. I said the whole offseason that the Steelers and Mitchell Trubisky, 200 yards and touchdown, turnover-free football, they could be dangerous. That's exactly what happened, when the Bengals played them. Yeah, they didn't put up 30, 40 points, 200 yards and a touchdown, and they were able to upset us, and lots of people did not expect this to happen. Their defense, holy crap. Minkah Fitzpatrick had 14 tackles and a pick 6. I mean, TJ Watt had a pick, sack, a couple tackles for loss. And when you look at that game, most people talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. Alex Highsmith had 3 sacks. That's somebody else who was absolutely phenomenal for the Steelers defense. And then you look at the Bengals defense. Heading into the regular season, the Steelers was considered to have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. We had 1 sack. Like, that was horrible to me. I expected our defense to be good because, we heard heading into the preseason, the Steelers' offensive line looked horrible in the preseason when they had Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett in their preseason games, and they only allowed 1 sack against this Bengals defense who really had high expectations heading into the season. I was surprised really how bad our defense played. I know we did play good, but only 1 sack against Pittsburgh and no turnovers, especially Mitchell Trubisky's first game kind of surprised me. And then you look at the Bengals offense. Yes, we gave up a lot of sacks. Joe Burrow played horrible, worst game of his career. If Joe Burrow played a little bit better, we would have won, but we didn't. Everybody loves to talk about the offensive line, how horrible it was, in the Steelers game, in the Cowboys game. We'll get in the Cowboys game in just a minute. But Joe Burrow was the reason we lost Week 1 against the Steelers. It was not the offensive line, because we've seen Joe Burrow overcome a horrible offensive line and won us games. He was sacked 9 times in the playoffs last year against the Titans and won us a game. He came back down from 17 points, getting sacked so many times against the Chiefs to help us, lock up the AFC North last season. He was sacked so many times, the nameplate came off the back of his jersey. But now, like, Joe Burrow was really bad. Like, under pressure, he just did not look himself. And I don't like people being biased about this. When Joe Burrow does something good, oh, look what Burrow did. But the second Joe Burrow does something bad, people try to ignore it. We need to realize Burrow has not played good these first 2 games, and he is a big reason why we are 0-2. If Burrow just played a little bit better, 100% we're 2-0 right now. But the Steelers game, to me, it was frustrating. If we lost the game to, the Bills, Browns, Jets, okay, fine, whatever. We lose to the Steelers, that ticks me off more than anything else. I hate the Steelers more than any team in the NFL, more than any team in all sports. And the way we lost the game just really ticks me off because we shot ourselves in the foot so many freaking times, and we did not capitalize off of the opportunities that we had. Instead, we lost, and it's just very, very frustrating losing the Steelers in Week 1.
Without a doubt. And Jordan, a lot of times in football games, when a team runs back the opening kickoff for a touchdown, that didn't happen this game, but I'm saying, or they get an early pick six, for some reason, that momentum is so hard to dig out of. I've seen it time and time again. You think it's only like one score. Like when a team just drives down and scores a touchdown, you can almost rebound from that. But when there's like a kick return or a pick six early or a fumble return early for a touchdown, for some reason, teams just can't rebound from that. And I think that's what set the tone for this game. Early on, they got that quick pick six. We're in a hole. We couldn't recover from it. And then the offensive line collapsed, and it was lights out for us. It was shocking. Like the old Mike Tyson thing, right? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Every play looks good on the chalkboard until you put it out there and the plays aren't working anymore. And that's what was going on this game. And I mean, I'm a massive fan of Joe Burrow, and I have a very hard time putting any blame on Joe Burrow for anything. I have to admit it wasn't his best game. You could see he was labored in some of his throws, but he was getting pressured so much. I don't know if any quarterback can come back from having that much pressure, getting hit that many times. Like you just can't even sit back in the pocket one time comfortably and get the ball down the field. And I thought that was the case in this game. And from the very beginning, it just slipped away from us. It was a punch in the face from Mike Tyson, and the Bengals couldn't recover.
And you mentioned, let's say a pick six, on the defense's first drive or opening kickoff return. I would love to see a stat that when that happens, the odds of that team winning, because it's ridiculously high. If there's a stat, I would love to see that. But with Burrow, it's crazy because me and you have talked before. When you look at the Bengals, it kind of takes about a quarter for this offensive line to kind of get used to the defense. And I kind of thought after the first quarter, this offensive line will slowly get better, kind of like they have in most games, pretty much except for the Super Bowl. But it was just not really the case at all, which was kind of even weirder to me. Like, it was so crazy. This offensive line normally picks it up in the second half, just was not the case at all. And I love, how these people are overreacting about the offensive line. This offensive line bad? Absolutely. I think it takes time. Hopefully it'll get better. But, looking at this, Week 2 game here against the Cowboys, this one was, I don't know. This one was just way more shocking. Even if Dak Prescott played this game, I thought the Bengals were going to win, not because I'm biased. I think the Cowboys are ridiculously overrated. I think they're one of the most overrated teams heading into the season. And this was something else. Like I mentioned, the Bengals had one sack on defense against the Steelers' horrible offensive line. The Bengals had one sack on defense against the Cowboys, who have a very, very bad offensive line. This offensive line last season was not the same compared to years past. And they lost Connor Williams and they lost Leo Collins to us. So you got multiple new starters on the offensive line. You would expect the Bengals defense to really, go out there, pressure a quarterback who only has a couple of stars in his career, but that was certainly not the case at all. I mean, Cooper Rush was 19 of 31 to 235 and a touchdown. You would not expect it at all. Like the first drive, they go and score. I wasn't really worried because it's something when you see, let's say, a backup quarterback, or maybe even in college football, when you see a small team score their opening drive against a really big team. It's not that shocking because it kind of takes the defense a drive or two to kind of get used to this offense. And I thought maybe after this first drive after the Cowboys scored, our defense is going to get better. We're going to kind of, have a better game plan for Cooper Rush. That was not the case at all. And it's just so crazy to me. We're talking about this defense last season. In the two second halves, we played the Chiefs. I believe we gave up like 3 points or something crazy like that. And then we're like having Cooper Rush play absolutely great out there. And then like you look at this Bengals offense, it's really crazy to me how we were not able to score against this Dallas defense. It does not make any sense. Joe Burrow was 24-36, 199 passing yards and a touchdown. Yes, Joe Burrow was sacked a lot, but I feel like this game, especially more compared to the Steelers game, Joe Burrow did not throw the ball when he should have, and he stood in the pocket for way too long. This was This was not the Joe Burrow we have seen in the past. It just did not make any sense. There were multiple times he should have thrown the ball away. There was multiple times Joe Mixon or Hayden Hurst was out there just past the line of scrimmage. He should have thrown to them, and he didn't, and he got a sack. I feel like the stats of this game are very deceiving because when you look at, the Cowboys sat Burrow, 6-7 times. That is true. But you look at, there is I believe a play, Hayden Hurst completely missed a block. That's not the offensive line's fault. That's Hurst's fault. He missed a block, but that's going to go in the offensive line stat sheet that they gave up a sack. When you look at Burrow, there was 2-3 instances where he should have thrown the ball away, where he should have, thrown to Mixon or somebody, and he got sacked. This offensive line isn't good, like I mentioned. It's very deceiving because when Joe Burrow's not throwing the ball away like he should. And it's so crazy to me when you look at this, Bengals team. This is the Bengals team that had so much high expectations heading into the season. One of the best offenses in the NFL, the best wide receiver true in the NFL. Mixon's a top 7 running back, Burrow's top 5 quarterback. And we can't score hardly anything against the freaking Dallas Cowboys. It's so crazy to me. Heading into the season, this should never, ever, ever, ever happen at all. Joe Burrow in the first 2 weeks has been outperformed by Mitchell Trubisky and Cooper Rush, and he's lost to both of those quarterbacks. That should not happen. And I'm trying not to overreact, but it starts with Joe Burrow. 90% of the time in the NFL, when you have the better quarterback, you're going to win the game. And we saw that last season. Joe Burrow was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL the coming games we won. Joe Burrow's had two bad performances so far in the season, and look where we're at right now. We're 0-2. But this Cowboys game to me was just so shocking because we could never get anything going from the start. Our defense played bad. Our offense played bad. I really thought we were able to rebound. I thought we were going to be able to rebound this, past week against Dallas. That was certainly not the case. But I'm just still kind of surprised at how bad of a start we've had the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and Jordan, you bring up a good point. When you're facing what I feel is an inferior team, like really, the Bengals are a better team than the Cowboys, regardless of what happened in that game. You sometimes remember these teams are preparing that whole week for that opening drive. So yeah, I don't not expect them to have a good opening drive. Cooper Rush scores a touchdown. That's fine. And that's exactly what happened. They've been preparing for that drive all week. Boom, 7-0 Cowboys. No big deal there. Then on the next drive, we end up letting up a touchdown. That's what really got us. Now we're in the whole 14-3. Now there's several things that are happening from there. And what I do on my podcast, I analyze every Joe Burrow sack. And Jordan, I'm telling you, it was a jailbreak on virtually every pass play. And I mean, if anyone out there wants to say it's on Joe Burrow, that's your prerogative. But it literally was a jailbreak on every pass play, and it was coming from everywhere. Collins was having an extremely rough time with Parsons. Jonah was getting overpowered consistently. There was pressure coming from all over. And what teams are starting to do now is they're getting pressure with just 4 guys up front. So now they're dropping 7 into coverage, and you're throwing into a minefield. And that's what Joe Burrow's facing. And I know, Jordan, obviously I consistently defend Joe Burrow because he's my guy. And I truly believe that was the case. If you really analyze every play that he got hit on and the entirety of that game, no one could have performed under those circumstances. When 4 guys can create pressure and they can just drop 7 into coverage, there's very few windows to throw in. And then teams are taking away the deep game now because we're getting pressure with the front 4. So now we're going to drop 2 deep safeties, and then we're going to have 5 guys underneath. And that's exactly what's going on right now. And it's almost like when teams figured out Lamar Jackson, like don't be afraid to zero blitz him. Although we saw the result of that this week, he runs for a 75-yard touchdown. But like it's a formula that you crack the code on teams. And man, I hate to say it, and I hope no opposing coordinators are listening, but it feels like teams are cracking the code on the Bengals, and we have to adapt and we have to figure out a different way. But it has to start up front. These guys have to play better. And there's times where you're seeing Micah Parsons on the outside. There was a couple plays where they left him unblocked. So one of the sacks was they decided they were going to throw a quick screen and let Parsons come in. And that's another play that looks good on the chalkboard, right? Oh, let the defensive end come in. We're going to just throw it over him and past him. But you have to, it doesn't work on the field. He's too fast for that play. Looks good in theory, doesn't work in practice. Then there's other plays where you're putting one guy on him and one guy's getting toasted by him, and you need to put two guys on him. And in my podcast, I went back to the Super Bowl, and I don't want to relive, hurtful times for us. But on the last play of the Super Bowl that we all of us Bengal fans are dying by it, because it could have been the most historical play in Super Bowl history, where you see Jamar Chase toasting Jalen Ramsey down the sideline and Joe Burrow getting sacked. But what happened on that play? You have Aaron Donald coming in one-on-one on Quentin Spain and beating him. And you have Trey Hopkins like dancing around wondering who to block. Like, the instant play call on that should have been a double team on Aaron Donald. Like, forget about theory and chalkboard and maintaining your zone blocking or whatever theory they had blocking wise in that game. They had Trey Hopkins dancing around while Quentin Spain is getting destroyed by Aaron Donald. If Trey Hopkins just from the get would have double teamed him, they would have had that extra half a second, and we probably would have been Super Bowl heroes. And I saw some of that in this game, where the same thing with Micah Parsons. He's lighting up La'el Collins, and I just don't get it. And I have respect for La'el Collins. He's a good guy. He's had a great career. He did a promo for my show, so it's hard to talk bad about him. But man, he was just he practiced against Micah Parsons for a whole season. Supposedly he helped groom him, and he went against him every day. And he's getting tricked by the spin move. He's getting tricked by the speed move. He's getting overpowered on a bull rush. It was so frustrating and so confusing. But I'm rambling because I'm frustrated and I'm hurt by it all. But the reality is, Jordan, the truth, it was coming from everywhere. And there was even sacks where there was guys, all the receivers were over 10 yards deep. And there was no quick throw for Joe Burrow. Like, if the whole game you're realizing that he's got barely a second to let it go, why on a crucial third down are you just sending everyone out and having a play that takes over 2 seconds to develop? So I like I said, I studied the sacks, a couple on Collins, a couple on Jonah, one on Kappa, unfortunately, who's been playing excellently. That was the one where Burrow got the ball slapped out of his hand. But a couple on coaching, a couple on scheme, and a couple on why aren't you doubling this guy, and a couple on why are you forgetting about this guy. All right, sorry for the rant, man, but just like you, Jordan, I'm fired up about this. It hurts.
Absolutely, ticked off, frustrated. This should not be happening. And something, when you look at the offensive line and you go back and watch that Cowboys game, I do think there were times Burrow could have got the ball away. But like you said, even when he wasn't sacked, there was a couple other times where he very well could have ended up being sacked. And at the start of the game, to me, I thought it was very weird Dallas lined up Parsons on the right side, with La'el Collins, and not the left side. I've said before multiple times, I don't really like Jonah Williams much. I'm not high on him, not nearly as much as other people. If Micah Parsons is doing that against La'el Collins, imagine what it would have been like if he was going up against Jonah Williams. La'el Collins is much, much, much better than Jonah Williams. And to me, I thought, well, heading into the game, I'm like, why is he not lined up on the left side? And he's still able to do that good, going up on the right side against Collins. That is kind of concerning, especially, this is 2 straight weeks on his offensive line has looked very, very bad. But you're talking about coaching. And I think that has something to do with it as well. When you look at the play calls were not in a favor to get the ball out quick. This is something I talked about a lot in the offseason, and it was kind of shown in week 1 against the Steelers. Joe Mixon had a career high in targets in week 1. He had 9 targets. He had a career high receptions in week 1. He had 7 receptions. He had 3 yards short of his career high receiving yards in one game. He had 63 receiving yards in week 1 against the Steelers. When Burrow threw the ball to Mixon, it was a short passes. Take 1-2 seconds. He's not very, very hard for him to get sacked when a short pass to Mixon. If you're getting sacked in that's even a bigger problem. But one of the last drives the Bengals had in the fourth quarter against the Steelers, they were just throwing 4-yard passes to Mixon. It was working every single time, and I know they had the pass to come back, but when you look at it, it's such a high percentage throw. The odds of having an interception in those plays are very, very unlikely. The odds of Burrow getting sacked isn't that likely either. Joe Mixon was a key contributor to the Bengals in their playoff run. When you look towards the end of the regular season last season, and in the playoffs, Joe Mixon was getting more targets and game spans than he ever did in his career, and the Bengals won. Yes, the offensive line was bad at times, but when we had Mixon more involved in the receiving game, our offensive line was better. I know our offensive line was horrible against the Steelers, but most of Mixon's receiving yards kind of came in the fourth quarter when our offensive line wasn't as bad. It was the first drive or two when the Bengals played the Cowboys. One of the first plays of the game, Mixon had 17, I believe, 17 receiving yards on one of his first catch of the game, Burrow's first completion of the game. And then we stopped that. Joe Mixon for the rest of the game had 9 receiving yards. What is Taylor thinking? I'm the first 2 years, I was not high on Taylor at all. I said he should have been fired. This past season, obviously, he had huge improvements. But when you look at this, if you're trying to protect your investment in Burrow, you signed some top offensive linemen. That's not working out so far. You have Joe Mixon, who I think is not being talked about enough when it comes to the receiving game. He has shown multiple times these first couple weeks and towards the end of the season last year, he's more than capable of getting 5 or 6 receptions a game. And then, you'll do that play and he'll get 20 yards. And then you don't do that play a single freaking time for the rest of the game. It doesn't make any sense, because when you're not doing those plays and you're having, let's say 15 passes, 15-yard passes, it's going to take longer for the play to develop. It's going to make a much higher chance for Burrow to get sacked. And I just don't get it. You need to have Mixon more in the receiving game, because it's going to limit, it's going to take away some of the pressures off Burrow. It's not a high likely turnover play, and it's a high percentage play to get yards. Even if it's 5 or 6 yards, that's better than getting a negative 5 or 6 yards from a sack. I just don't understand it. It worked the first play of the game against the Cowboys, and then we're like, screw it, let's not do this for the rest of the game. I just do not get that at all.
Yeah, and you know what? You're exactly right, Jordan. We came out the right way against the Cowboys. If we're going to say that our offensive line can't hold, we had the right game plan right in the beginning. There was the pass that you're talking about to Mixon right away. Then there was a run to Mixon. Then there was a quick screen out to Chase. Like, everything was happening quick and short and boom and boom. And you saw we moved the ball right down the field. Although we ended up getting stopped, we did score a field goal and drove down the field. And then they got away from that script. And you're exactly right. I don't understand why.
And you look at it, the coaching was a major issue the first week. I'm never going to expect Zach Taylor to outcoach Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's a top 5 coach in the NFL. He's proved it time and time again. But when Zach Taylor is outcoached by Mike McCarthy, that's a problem. Mike McCarthy is one of the most overrated coaches in the NFL. Without Aaron Rodgers, he would have been fired from the Packers 10 years ago instead of 4 or 5 years ago. And just the coaching, the schemes did not make any sense against the Cowboys. It's so frustrating. This should not be happening. Like I said, I hate losing the Steelers, but I wasn't shocked. I was shocked how we lost. This should never happen, losing the Cowboys with freaking Cooper Rush as their starting quarterback. And hopefully Mixon's going to get more involved in the pass catching game. He should, because I feel like our offense is much better, because that's just another weapon a defense has to defend. When you have when you have Boyd, Higgins, Chase, Hayden Hurst, who has shown some promise these first 2 games, and Joe Mixon, you cannot stop those guys. But instead, we're having these plays a couple of seconds to develop. By that time, Joe Burrow is getting, he's already on the ground, getting back up before these guys, are past the corners. It's so freaking frustrating. This should not be happening. And I try not to overreact, but this is just so aggravating. We're 0-2. We should not be 0-2. I know it's early, but we need to get our act together quick. Taylor needs to get his act together quick. This offensive line needs to get better quick, or this could be a disappointing season for Bengals fans.
100%. And I want to go back to that point, but before I get into the offensive line and the prognosis for the future, let's just think optimistically for 1 second. Yes, the offensive line, for whatever reason, does not have it together. I don't know what's going on with Coach Pollock. He was brought in here as a guru and as one of the top offensive line coaches, and I never like to cut on our guys and on our coaches. It's not fun for me to do that. I want to be in their corner. I want everyone to succeed. I don't want to talk bad about Jonah Williams. I don't want to talk bad about Coach Pollock. but there have been some problems there, and I just don't understand why. But for 1 second, optimistically, let's think about it. We're one lazy snap away, one lazy extra point away from winning against the Steelers, right? Wilcox wasn't ready to snap, even though he should have been prepared. If that was a Bill Belichick team, he would have been prepared. So he floats the snap back there. We get that kick blocked. But it was this close to a victory there. Joe Burrow brings us down at the end in a game that we had no business winning. Next week, game that we had no business winning, we come within 3 yards of getting a first down with Tyler Boyd and at least being able to run out the clock and go into overtime. So, like, we were this close to victories in both games. So it even though we got the crap beat out of us, for lack of better words, in both of those games, we legitimately did. We still almost won them. It's a matter of one lazy snap and 3 yards, and we could be sitting here at 2-0. But I'm just confused about what's going on with the offensive line. I mean, that's what I go back to. I'm not thinking about Burrow. I'm not thinking about Coach Taylor. I'm not thinking about play calling. I'm not thinking about anything else. I watch these games and I watch them over, and I study every play, and I try to be as informed as I can and try to bring the best perspectives as I can. And all I'm seeing is a jailbreak consistently. Even Mixon, when you go back to the Steelers game, Mixon got a lot of those yards himself. The original hole that he's going to run into is totally jammed, and he finds a way to cut back into open space. That's what's going on. These guys up front are not doing the job. Karras is excellent. Karras is just as advertised. Kappa has been doing very good. Volson, I'm seeing a stat with the PFF rankings, and people are blowing him up on social media with, I don't know, he had a high ranking this week in the pass blocking game. Good. I don't want to step on the rookie. Again, I don't want to talk bad about our guys. What I'm watching, what I'm seeing out of Olsen, truthfully, right now, is he's slow. And they're having him as a guard pull out, and he's not getting to his blocks in time. Maybe he's doing some damage in the pass game, but he's missing blocks in the running game. And I saw it vividly on a couple plays here. But I'm not here to criticize Cordell Volson. I want him to succeed, and I'm glad that PFF had him ranked high. But if you do the eye test, you're seeing that he's a little bit slow, and maybe that's why he's a fourth rounder. And there's a leverage issue. He's a 6'7" guard. That's very tall for a guard. It's very tall for, well, maybe for a tackle, that's okay, but that's tall for a guard. And when we played the Steelers, I saw Hayward consistently get underneath him and push him back. And that was a problem. So with Volson, I'm seeing a leverage issue, and I'm seeing a speed issue. And with Jonah, I'm seeing a failed first rounder, and it angers me. And I just said it. I don't want to talk bad about him, but he is not working out. And I'm sorry, Jonah, if you're listening, or if anyone's listening that's going to get word out to Jonah, I'm sorry. You have to play better. You can't be a first rounder where we pick up your fifth year tender, and you can't play like this because you're getting beat by speed. Guys are bull rushing you. You're missing assignments. It can't be. You can't try to be a leader on this offensive line and get destroyed like this on a weekly basis. Jordan, I'm sorry, man. I'm like I said, I'm really annoyed about it. But it all goes back to the offensive line for me. I guess I keep talking about the same things, but when I watch the games, that's the story of the first two games. If the offensive line played this much better, we would be 2-0.
You mentioned PFF. I think PFF can be kind of inaccurate at times and inconsistent. Like when you look at, we've gave up 13 sacks in the first two games. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jonah Williams has gave up the most sacks. I don't even know how many times I've said it. I just don't get the hype of Jonah Williams. People need to start talking about it more. People need to stop making excuses. This is a first round pick. He should be playing better, like what you're saying. This should not be happening. If Quentin Spain was replacement for Cordell Volson right now, Jonah Williams, without a doubt, is 100% would be our worst starting offensive lineman, and that shouldn't happen because he's the youngest. He has coming out of the draft had a ton of potential, has not lived up to the hype at all, and it's crazy that you give his fifth-year option. He's going to be making $13-14 million. I don't even think he's worth $8 million. I mean, we're giving Jonah Williams the contract that people want Jesse Bates to get. It is absolutely crazy to me. And you mentioned Cordell Volson. I feel like those PFF grades are kind of interesting, like kind of wild. First week against the Steelers, he didn't play good. But what do you expect when you have a draft prospect who's a rookie, who is raw and kind of a project guy coming into his rookie year playing against Cameron Hayward? Second week, I still didn't really see the hype with him. Like he wasn't really good. I don't think that good in the second week. I don't know. I've been an advocate to say the Bengals should have signed Spain the whole offseason. That was the one move to me that did not make any sense, along with giving John Williams a fifth-year option. I would love Quentin Spain on the team, but it just doesn't make sense right now. Like I think Quentin Spain is an upgrade of Cordell Volson. I think Quentin Spain was our best offensive lineman in the last 2 years, but right now it just doesn't make sense because this offensive line is already having issues. You don't want to kill a rookie's confidence just after 2 games and have this offensive line's already struggling and trying to get chemistry when it's sort of 2 games. Now you're going to bring in another guy who you're going to have to, have more chemistry with this offensive line. I like Spain. I would love him. I've been a huge advocate. It doesn't make sense right now. Maybe 9-10 games in, if we're still struggling, then I can maybe get it. But I just don't see the point of having signing Spain right now. But this offensive line, it is just so infuriating. Like you said, Karras has been great. Kappa's been good. Collins has kind of been a disappointment so far. I kind of expected better from him, especially because he's one of the best right tackles in the NFL. So, like I said, I try not to overreact, but this is just very frustrating. And we should not be in the situation we're in right now. So, overreaction or reaction, this Bengals offensive line is worse than last season.
I mean, on paper, you would think they were better than last year, but with the numbers and like even last year, it wasn't this kind of jailbreak like it is right now. So I would like to think that we have a better offensive line, but if you really look at the performance, last year's offensive line was better. And it's crazy for me to say that Adeniji and that whole crew was better than this, but last year we were able to throw 40, 50-yard passes downfield at will. And we haven't been able to sniff that this year. So, yeah, okay. If you give me a vote at this point in time, I'm going to say last year's offensive line was better. I imagine as the season goes by, we're going to feel that this year's offensive line was better. But as of right now, unfortunately, last year.
See, I feel like this is the debatable topic because when you get into different stuff, you can make cases for both. I'm going to say this year because they've gave up 13 sacks in 2 games. That is absolutely god-awful. Burrow, the PFF charged Burrow with 5 of those. I would probably charge him with maybe 3 or 4. Like I said, I think PFF is deceiving. But like I did say, there's times Burrow could have been sacked more. When you look at this offensive line, I don't think it's – it's bad. But I don't think it's super, super bad because I think Burrow could have thrown a couple away. When you look at Hayden Hurst, he gave up 1. That's not the offensive line's fault. Drew Sample gave up 1. That's not the offensive line's fault. So you take away 4 right there. That's 9 in 2 games. That's still really bad, but that's a lot better than giving up 13. And when you look at this offensive line, it doesn't make sense to me that these players did not play in the preseason. The only starting offensive lineman that played in the preseason was Cordell Volson. He was trying to get a starting job at left guard. But when you look at this, I think it's going to take time. 4 or 5 weeks from now, I think we should, and I think we will be in a much better situation. Look at last year with the Chiefs. The Chiefs last season, they bring on Joe Thuney. They had pretty much a whole new starting offensive lineman for the Chiefs. They started 3-4, and they were a couple plays away from being in a Super Bowl last year. We had to come down and beat them in the AFC Championship game for the Chiefs to go for the Chiefs were in the AFC Championship game last year and really should have went to the Super Bowl. They started 3-4 with a bad offensive line. I think it's going to take time. I don't understand why it takes so much time though in the offensive line. I don't get the chemistry and stuff like that. I feel like that's something you should be able to have within the first couple of weeks. But I think it certainly is a debatable topic. Burrow was sacked 51 times last year in 16 games. Honestly, it seems more than that. Like, that's barely over 3 a game. When it's so crazy. When there was only 1 game last season, Joe Burrow was not sacked at all. And as crazy as it sounds, that was against Pittsburgh. But when you look at it, Joe Burrow has been sacked 13 times in 2 games. Joe Burrow has been sacked 25% of the time this season as he did last year. Joe Burrow is already 25% there for sacks he had compared to last season in just 2 games. It's crazy. I think this offensive line is going to get better. If it doesn't, we're in trouble. There's no thing about it. We're totally in trouble if this offensive line doesn't get better. I think it will. Give it a couple weeks. We should be fine. But this is a situation on top of that we shouldn't be happening right now because we kind of expect, we didn't. I didn't expect this offensive line to not give up any sacks against the Steelers. I was not, kind of expecting this offensive line. Holy crap, we have a top 5 offensive line. It's going to take time. Look at last year when we played the Vikings. The first game last year against the Vikings, we won. The offensive line was kind of okay. Look at our second game. We lost to the Chicago Bears. Burrow threw 3 picks. Holy crap, we lost to the Bears. The sky's falling down. Zach Taylor's going to be fired. Burrow's not 100%. Should Burrow be benched and all that stuff? We go to the Super Bowl. I do think this offensive line will get better. I think we should be fine. I just think it'll take a couple more weeks.
I'm hoping you're right, Jordan. And really, there's no cavalry. Like, who's on the bench? We're going to bring in Deontay Smith. He looked lost out there, even when he was blocking as like an extra offensive lineman. Quentin Spain off the couch, maybe. I don't know. Even in this game, and I don't want to. This is the last thing I really want to say in the offensive line because I don't want the listeners to get bored of me rambling about it. But in this specific game against the Cowboys, I would have thrown either Jonah or Collins on the bench just for a series or two, just to be like, you know what? It's not a guarantee you're going to be out here all the time. I would have just said, you're going off the field, bring in someone else. But then when you're thinking about who they bringing in, it would be Deontay Smith at that point. I don't know. There's no one even else that you're thinking of there. So I'm probably flawed in that theory, but I don't think we should be afraid to say if you're playing that badly and you're getting Joe Burrow ripped up this much, sit out for a series and watch from the sideline and gain some perspective because your job isn't just automatically locked down.
When you look at
that's all I got.
When you look at Deontay Smith, when you look at the worst performers in the preseason, he was 1 or 2. He was really, really bad in the preseason. And he's playing against second and third string people. And I cannot imagine him with first string. And it's one of those situations, if it wasn't for our lack of depth at offensive line, I don't even think Deontay Smith would have maybe even made a team. He was that bad. He had so many penalties, so many false starts, so many holding penalties. But I agree with you. If he comes in a series, it's kind of a reality check for Jonah Williams. Get your act together. You're not playing what you should. You should be way better than what you are. You're not guaranteed to start. Yeah, you're not playing good. Deontay Smith isn't great, but you need to realize if you don't get your act together, if you don't play better, your job can be taken away from you. I completely agree there. And something else with the offensive line. We've kind of talked about the offensive line the whole time, but when it's something like this, it kind of needs to be talked about. Something I hate. Joe Burrow's been sacked 13 times in 2 games. Oh, well, Joe Burrow's on pace to get sacked 111 times. That's not freaking going to happen. I hate – it's so ridiculous. You know what else is on pace to happen? Joe Burrow throwing 34 interceptions this season. Is that going to happen? Absolutely not. So why do you even talk about that? I feel like lots of this is just people who don't even watch the games. It's so frustrating. Oh, the offensive line's back. The Bengals paid this much money for the offensive line to suck. Burrow's going to win out of Cincinnati, even though he said he wants to stay in Cincinnati. It's just very frustrating. And as soon as we start to lose, the national media like ESPN and Fox Sports 1 overreacting about the Bengals. Oh, well, they weren't as good as what we thought they were. These people didn't think we were that great in the first place. And we were 1 minute away from winning the Super Bowl last season, and you don't pick us to win the division. But now when we lose 2 games, you act like you thought we were good, even though you didn't think we were good. It's just so frustrating. People didn't talk good about us last year. We went to the Super Bowl, but now that we're bad, they're back on the basically hating bandwagon. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, we can't get a break either way. We didn't get any credit coming into the season. And now that we're underperforming, we're getting hammered on as well. So, yeah, not fun. Very rough start for us Bengal fans. Hopefully we can turn it around against the Jets. The lucky thing is there's only 3 AFC teams that are 2-0 at this point, and our whole division is 1-1. So as ugly as these first 2 games have been, and we almost technically won both of them, we're a win or 2 away from being right back in the mix. So all is not lost. But a loss to the Jets could be disastrous because then you have Baltimore next. No, I'm sorry, you have Miami next. Then you have Baltimore. You could go down a rabbit hole. So we really need to stop the bleeding right now and get a win this week against the Jets. And that's a very winnable game. Flacco's a stationary target back there. I know they had a monumental win this week against the Browns. I'm glad they beat the Browns. That helps us. But we can't let them ride that momentum, because really right now the Jets are going like this momentum-wise, and we're going like this momentum-wise. So it doesn't look good for us, but we are a better team. Let's right the ship and get this season on track. This could all be a memory. We could all forget about all this negativity and all this hate right now with a nice win this week, and then buckle up and give Tua a beating in 4 or 5 days after that.
And when you look at this Jets team, like, oh, Flacco's washed, he should have been retired. I think that, I think that's fair to say. But you look at it, I mean, yeah, we should beat the Jets, but we just lost to Cooper Rush. Like, it's in Mitchell Trubisky. I can give a pass for Trubisky, especially as on the Steelers, but Cooper Rush with a horrible offensive line, there's just no excuse for that. Like, oh, but we'll kill the Jets. We heard that week 1. Which I never understood that we were going to kill the Steelers in the first place. Just did not make sense to me. It was going to be a great game, win or lose for us. And, I mean, it was. Unfortunately, we lost. Week 2, we killed the Cowboys. I thought we killed the Cowboys. That obviously did not happen. But when you look at it, the Jets, like, we have to pressure Flacco. Flacco is not mobile at all. He's, 38, 39, something like that. He's never been a mobile quarterback. You get pressure on him, you blitz him a ton. Do it, and Arumo needs to pressure Flacco the whole entire game. He's going to pressure on his face. He's going to force bad passes, some interceptions, get some hands in his face, deflect some passes. And when you look at this Jets team is on paper, if they're healthy and if they were more proven, I would be much more concerned. Heading into the season, I thought the Jets they were one of the most underrated teams in the NFL. Everybody kind of joined their hype train, so I kind of jumped off of it. But when you look at this Jets team, Zach Wilson, he's not playing this game. I think he has potential to be good. This offensive line has shown some promise compared to the last season. They signed Laken Tomlinson from San Francisco. They have some nice guys in the offensive line. Garrett Wilson, the rookie wide receiver from Ohio State, Corey Davis, Braxton Berrios, Denzel Mims. If he can, produce like they wanted him to, he can be pretty good. CJ Uzomah, who hasn't really done nothing for them. Tyler Conklin, Michael Carter, the running back, Breece Hall, the rookie running back. They have lots of talented offensive players. When you look at through the first 3 weeks, this Jets offense has the most, I would say, the best offensive talent from the first 3 teams we played. When you look at the Cowboys and then the Jets, and the main thing is the quarterback. Like, if Joe Flacco can be kind of like I said with the Steelers. 200 yards a pick, turnover-free football, I think this could be a situation where the Bengals could lose again. Like, should we lose? Absolutely not. But this defense has 2 sacks in 2 games against 2 horrible offensive lines. That's a major concerning issue for me. Kind of like I said with the offense earlier, Mixon has to get involved in the pass-catching game. If you want to limit the sacks, Mixon needs at least 7-8 targets. We saw, we had 9 targets week 1, and we know Joe Burrow was sacked a lot, but during those plays and during those drives when Mixon was catching the ball, our offensive line looked okay. It looked like some of the best it has the whole season so far. Mixon needs the ball. I cannot wait to see Jamar Chase and Sauce Gardner. Like, that is going to be a tremendous watch, tremendous matchup. Should be a great matchup there. I think Tyler Boyd needs more involved. When you look at last season, when Tyler Boyd was involved, we were better. We had more targets. He had more yards. When you look at certain stats, we had a much better winning percentage when Boyd had so many targets compared when he only had like 2 or 3. Tyler Boyd had 2 targets last week. Mitchell Wilcox and Drew Sample combined for the same targets as Tyler Boyd. That should never, ever, ever, ever happen. That is inexcusable. Tyler Boyd's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. He needs more targets. He's one of them. I would say one of the most, like I said, underrated. He doesn't drop the ball often at all. One of the most reliable receivers we have. When you look at Chase, yes, he's great, but at times he drops the ball. You don't really say it often for, Tyler Boyd. But I let's see Hayden Hurst, get more involved as well. When you add him to the mix, it's just another guy. It's hard for the defense to stop. I really hope this, with Taylor, can really mainly have Mixon be involved in the pass catching game, because it's going to limit our sacks. It's going to limit our opportunities to throw interceptions. And if we can get Mixon more involved in the pass catching game, or we can pressure Flacco, I think we have a pretty good chance of winning.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the Jets don't have the same kind of pass rush as the Cowboys and the Steelers. I mean, Carl Lawson, obviously he's a very good pass rusher, but he's not on the level of Watt or Parsons. Quentin Williams is very good in the interior. Hopefully we can get a double team on him with Karras if he's going to be on Volson. If he's on Kappa, then we have Karras and Kappa on him. So hopefully we can neutralize him. You're right. I'm anxious to see Chase on Sauce Gardner. Maybe Gardner will actually give up a touchdown for once, and we can give him his welcome to the NFL moment there. But yeah, I agree. It's going to have to be a game of quick passing until we can settle in. We can't just say, all right, let's drop Joe Burrow back and throw, because again, they're going to rush 4 and they're going to have 7 in coverage. They're going to have 2 deep safeties. There's going to be nowhere to throw up top. It's all going to have to be underneath. So let's start with a lot of mixing. Let's start with, like you said, with some Hayden Hurst. Let's start with some Boyd in the middle of the field. Let's start with some quick slants to Chase. Like we can't be dropping back there and thinking Joe Burrow's going to have time to just survey the field and dump a 40-yard sideline pass. It's got to be quick stuff to start the game. And then as the game develops, you'll see what opens up for you later on. But you're exactly right, Jordan. I would say mixing out of the backfield. And it's a very popular topic for Bengal fans right now. Let's get Chris Evans involved. And I'm not hopping on that bandwagon. Like, sometimes people annoy me when they get so caught up on a narrative with it. But give him a couple snaps. Give him a package or two. Just because if you're struggling like we are with the downfield throws, and you're going to rely on running back passes, and you have a guy with fresh legs who specializes in catching the ball out of the backfield, utilize him. They like P. Ryan better than Evans, obviously, because if not, Evans would be playing more. They see these guys in practice every day. We don't. So they have made a decision on who's better, who deserves more playing time out of those 2 guys. I understand that. I'm not going to argue with the coaching staff on that. But get Evans involved a little bit more. I'm not saying replace P. Ryan with Evans. P. Ryan's a great blocker. P. Ryan can run the ball hard. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. We all have our problem with him because of the Tennessee game when he tipped the ball up in the air, and the Super Bowl where he didn't dive after that ball. But that's a tough judgment on the spot call. I don't want to keep going back to the Super Bowl. But I would say get Evans just a little more involved. Just give him a series of plays that you're going to involve him in. Get him out there and just see what happens. At this point, you have nothing to lose.
And when you look at Burrow, he was sacked so many times against the Steelers, but like I said, these short passes, they're high percentage throws, not likely to get sacked. But yes, Burrow was sacked a lot of times against the Steelers. He threw 53 times. Like, what do you expect is going to happen when he throws 53 times? You're going to get sacked a lot. Like, when you look at his rookie season, he was on pace to break the NFL passing record for most attempts. And he got sacked so many times, he got hurt himself for the season. But I completely agree with Chris Evans. He's a guy who should be playing more. One of the best players in the preseason, without a doubt. And it's one of those situations where, teams that kind of looked at his film in the preseason. But look at the regular season. You might mix up a play specifically for Chris Evans. Players might not, really know how to scout him a ton because he's not played a whole lot.
Yes.
Chris Evans is ridiculously underrated and can be utilized so well in this offense. Okay, let's say you don't want to have Mixon get hit a ton if he's getting 20 rushing attempts a game and let's say 5-6 targets a game. Have Evans going for Mixon or have Evans going for P. Ryan. It brings somebody else in this offense that it'll be difficult for defenses to stop. And I just don't get the coaching for why Chris Evans isn't playing. When you look at these best players in the preseason, you look at Chris Evans, you look at Allen George, your undrafted safety this past season, and then you look at Daxton Hill. Daxton Hill played 2 snaps last week on defense. Daxton Hill played 6 defensive snaps the week prior. Why would you draft Daxton Hill in the first round if you're not going to play him? Daxton Hill was freaking phenomenal in the preseason, all over the field, making terrific, diving interceptions, pass deflections, getting some great tackles, getting some hard hits. You playing him 2 defensive snaps this past week? That is inexcusable. That should never, ever, ever happen again. He's way too talented to be sitting on the bench. It does not make sense to me, especially when you look at right now, the odds of Jesse Bates being on this roster next season aren't that likely. So go ahead and be getting Daxton Hill prepared to take the starting role for next season. I just don't get it. Daxton Hill was amazing in the preseason. He should be playing more. When you have Von Bell and Jesse Bates, Daxton Hill, that's a very, very nice safety trio. And I think he has shown too much promise. He has played too good to not be playing more than 2 snaps a game. He needs to be playing more than 2 snaps a game. Hopefully, they did it this week. And Morrow said, during his, being a defense coordinator, he does not, really rotate safeties often. Bates is a starter, so he's always going to be playing. I just don't get that. Like, you need to slowly start developing Daxton Hill more into this defense because he's going to be taking Jesse Bates' spot next season, especially the way Bates has played so far. Bates has played horrible. Like, let's be honest, he has not really played good much at all when Daxton Hill has showed so much promise. He was so talented. He was so great in the preseason. Our first-round selection, he's playing 2 defensive snaps. When you look at the snaps for first-round picks so far this season, take away injuries for first-round picks this past season, and take away, Kenny Pickett, a guy who's not starting right now. Daxton Hill is dead last in snaps. That doesn't make any sense. It goes back to coaching. Lou Anarumo should not be having a situation. He was phenomenal last season, and many expected him to not even be on the team this year because people thought he was going to get a head coaching job. When you look at him and Zach Taylor, I don't know why they're having these, these ridiculous, things at coaching when last year they were so good, and now all of a sudden, like, what is going on with them? I just don't get it. Daxton Hill needs to play more. If he doesn't, I'm going to be more ticked off this week. Chris Evans needs to play more, like you mentioned. It's just very frustrating. There are so many things to complain about with this team. I feel like if you think of one, you can think about 20 of them. And it's just so crazy because when you think of the Bengals, you think of their offensive line, like we've talked about. But when you start watching the game, Daxton Hill didn't play much at all. Another guy who I thought played pretty good in his limited snaps in the preseason was Akeem Davis-Gaither. I did not see him on the field like in the Cowboys game or the Steelers game. And I know Jermaine Pratt's played pretty good. Logan Wilson's was great last season, been good so far. Logan Wilson was only 1 of 2 linebackers last season to get 100 tackles and at least 4 interceptions. But Davis-Gaither, and for having trouble at times stopping the run, Davis-Gaither was the best linebacker coming out of the draft against the run. He was the best linebacker against the blitz. When in his limited times, playing in the regular season, he's been unable to stay healthy recently. He's played pretty good, and he wasn't a guy. He was not known to be a good guy in pass coverage, but he's shown he's been pretty good in pass coverage if given the opportunity. I don't get why we're playing some guys, but not the other. It just does not make sense to me. I hope it changes. And I really hope, our playing changes as well, because we better get a win this week against the Jets. If we don't, we are in some major, major, major trouble.
Jordan, there's a lot of wisdom that you just spit out and a lot of stuff to unpack there. And, we're not the coaches of the Bengals, and they know this personnel better than us. So I guess it's easy for us to sit here and say so-and-so should play, so-and-so should play. But sometimes coaches get stuck on their guys, and they, as the game goes by in the heat of battle, they kind of forget about putting other guys in. And I agree with you totally. So I want to get to Jesse Bates and Dax Hill in a second. But Akeem Davis-Gaither, he's a speed linebacker. And the only packages I really see him in is goal line. And it confuses me. I'm like, he's a little bit undersized and he's more of a speed guy. Why is he in there on goal line? And the coaching staff would probably laugh at me if I brought that up to them, and they probably have their reasons. But it confuses me as someone who really watches the film and analyzes this stuff. I just don't understand that. One play that Gaither, I barely saw Gaither on the field, like I said, this last game, except in goal line. But one negative, I don't know if a lot of fans caught it, but the Tony Pollard run down the sideline, that huge run early in the game, which set up their first or second score. It was Gaither who got sealed off on that play. He got sealed off, and that was his tackle to make. And in doing so, that whole mess with him getting blocked knocked into Logan Wilson, so he couldn't make the tackle. So just a side note, unfortunately, that was a negative play out of ADG. But I don't know, just seeing him in goal line packages only is a real mystery. Now to the Jesse Bates, Dax Hill thing. I don't know what's going on with Jesse Bates. He's such a good player. I think he's rusty. I don't know if the contract is in his head. I've had people say to me, is he in self-preservation mode so he doesn't get hurt? I don't know what's going on, but he let up that touchdown badly this week, the first touchdown of the game, which was if you look at that play, they blitzed Mike Hilton. So they figured, let's get some crazy pressure on Cooper Rush, throw a corner blitz that he's not expecting. And it was Jesse who was supposed to cover Noah Brown, and Bates just got flat-footed. Like, Brown runs at him, Bates just flat-footed, not on his toes. So the second Brown made the cut, Bates couldn't catch him because he just kind of locked up. And then there was that touchdown to the side. And then there was a key 4th and 2 later in the game where they were in zone coverage. They had Bell over top, and they had 3 guys underneath. And Bates covers the same tight end that one of the linebackers was covering and let one of the receivers get behind him. I don't know. I don't want to cut on Jesse Bates. You know, he's done a lot for this organization. We know that. But I counted, and then he had the dropped interception, but there was a penalty later on that. But I counted like 3 pretty egregious errors out of Jesse Bates this game, and he had a couple in the first game. So rough start, rusty, not an indictment on him. I still feel that he can come back and have a great dominant season. He's a great player. But in the first 2 games, there, as I just stated, there were specific examples of him not doing his job. Now, going to Dax Hill, you are exactly right. You have to involve him more for 2 reasons. One, he's a first-round pick. He's done nothing wrong. He excelled in the preseason, whether it was against backups or not. He showed awareness, and he showed quickness to the ball, and he showed instincts, and he's got that 4.3 speed. So just for no other reason, get him on the field so you don't destroy his confidence. Like, it's easy for a player to start like losing interest in the game if he's never in there. Not permanently, but I'm saying in that individual game. And the fact that he's like in there for just a couple snaps here and there, it's hard for him to get a rhythm, and it's not good for his confidence. And this is a first-round pick who we assume is going to be a cornerstone defender for this team for years to come, especially if Bates is going to be gone. So just for that confidence reason alone, it's not good that they're not playing Dax Hill more. They have to find a way to scheme him up in there more. And now when you look at, now going specifically to this game, when you look at the Jets, when you look at their personnel, they're a speed team. They're not a power team. So this is a team where you want to have more DBs in there, more safeties than linebackers. This is a game where maybe you just have Logan Wilson a lot in there, and you have Flowers and Hill in there, Dax Hill. Like, this is a perfect game to get him involved, because the Jets aren't going to, you don't need as much Jermaine Pratt as you do Dax Hill in this game. If you guys out there get my analogy on that. So this is a perfect game to get him involved. And with Flacco, all right, so we're having problems getting pressure with our front 4. I still think Hendrickson's been playing well. Hubbard's been excelling late in games. Reeder's been lights out. Hill's been lights out in the running game. I have really no complaints about the front 4, except they're not getting as many sacks as they could be getting. So what do? Let's bring extra pressure. Logan Wilson, not notoriously a great blitzer, so let's send Dax Hill off the side, especially on Flacco. You think Flacco is going to get away from a 4.3 rookie with that kind of speed? And I think it's a perfect game to utilize Dax Hill blitzing and protecting against the Jets' speed offense. Because, I mean, you run down that roster, Garrett Wilson's a speedster. They got the running backs who are all speedsters, Corey Davis, the whole lot of them. This is a Dax Hill game. If you're not going to involve him now, Coach Anarumo, when?
And you mentioned confidence killers. Those are huge for rookies. Look at John Ross, a guy who did not play much, got hurt, and his confidence was nowhere to be seen, and just he could not, really ever have the productivity that we thought he was going to as a first-round pick. And when you look at Dax Hill and Jesse Bates, I'm not saying, bench Bates or something, but I wouldn't be opposed to taking him out occasionally. This defense has to get used to Dax Hill being in this defense. When we talked about Jonah Williams, like maybe Dante Smith comes in for a drive or a drive or two. I don't think it's a bad idea to have that with Bates, because I've seen nothing with Bates that kind of appeals to me to him being on the team next season. Dax Hill was freaking phenomenal in the preseason, and he needs to be playing as much snaps as he possibly can, like you're saying, with confidence. And he needs to get used to this defense. These other players in the secondary needs to be getting used to playing with Dax Hill. Von Bell hasn't played. I don't even know if he played in preseason. If he didn't, he hasn't played with Dax Hill at all.
No.
These safeties and these players in the secondary need to be getting used to play with a guy who, like you said, is going to be a key contributor to this defense for hopefully a long time. It appears to be that way. The way he played in preseason, hopefully he can play that way in the regular season. But it's so frustrating. T Bloom Entertainment. Do you guys think some of Burrow's sacks are due him holding the ball too long? I think a couple. But I feel like the sacks are deceiving. Kind of talked about it. Some sacks, one sack was on Hurst, one sack was on Sample. I would say about 3 or 4 on Burrow. But like I said, there were also times where Burrow was just barely so close to being sacked. But this offensive line isn't good. But I don't think it's as bad as people think. But yes, I think a couple of Burrow sacks are him for holding the ball too long.
Yeah, T, I hear what you're saying. And you can, I guess you can point the finger that way. But when every play is a jailbreak and the guy's trying to make something happen, again, I'm a Joe Burrow enthusiast, so I guess I'm the wrong guy to answer this question. But when every play is a jailbreak and you need to make something happen, that's what's going on. And that's what he's doing on the last drives of games. Yeah, okay, we'll credit Joe Burrow with a couple of those sacks. But also, if you want to talk that way, let's credit Joe Burrow for getting out of some of those sacks, because there was a couple, he could have been sacked a few more times, but he ducks under a tackle and scrambles out of there for first down yardage or for a decent gain. But I understand. We can't just say it's everyone else and not Joe Burrow. You can put a little bit on him, but I'm not putting much on him, to tell you the truth, T.
So when you look at the Bengals, hopefully Burrow performs better. Hopefully the offensive line plays better. Really, everybody plays better, because just this team as a whole, when offense, defense, coaching, it's all been a disaster the first 2 weeks. We're very fortunate that there's only a couple of 2-0 teams in the AFC. But I feel like in the AFC, if we were in the NFC, it would be so much easier. You can get in the playoffs with the NFC with maybe 8 wins, as crazy as that sounds. AFC, you have to get 11 to pretty much make it a lock. When you have teams like the Broncos, the Raiders, Chargers, Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, who have looked pretty good, the Ravens. I know what people say, the Steelers aren't that good. I'm putting the Steelers in that mix, and the Bengals. That's about 10 teams right there. So the Bengals, to me, when you look at this, like this game is very, very important, much more than people think. Because if we start 0-3, then we play Thursday Night Football against the Dolphins, who look red hot right now at Baltimore. I know Lou Anamaro has pretty much figured out Lamar Jackson. Jackson has struggled against us the past couple times we played him. But 0-3, and we played the Dolphins and Ravens, we are in a very tough situation. This is why this game is very, very important against the Jets, and you just don't really think that'd be happening. I know most teams in the AFC are 1-1, but most teams in the AFC have not had a easy schedule like we had the first 2 weeks. We had a prime opportunity to win the Cowboys. We have a prime opportunity this week against the Jets. We are very fortunate to playing 2 backup quarterbacks. We've already screwed up once. We better not screw up again this week with another backup quarterback we're facing on the Jets. So looking at this Bengals-Jets game, what is your score prediction here this upcoming week between the Bengals and the Jets?
All right, so we all want to say that the Bengals are just going to explode and it's going to be, a 41-17 game. But I can't in good conscience say that, because we're still trying to get our sea legs underneath us. But I'm still going to say that we're going to win it. I really never pick against the Bengals, truthfully. But we've scored 1 touchdown in each of the first 2 games, so I can't say it's going to be a flurry of touchdowns. So I'm going to go 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals for the Bengals. So that's 23 points. The Jets are still going to score a little bit. I'm going to say 23-20 Bengals. We're back on track.
That's a good one. I was thinking 24 to, I don't know, either, I want to say 24 to 17. This is a situation where this offense should not be playing this bad. I think this offense will play better, but this is not going to be a situation like, oh, holy crap, Burrow's back to himself, all this offensive line. It's going to take time. Like this is not going to be an overnight thing when the Bengals start scoring 30-plus points. Chase is getting 100, whatever, how many yards. Mixon's getting so many yards. For this offense to click and work, I think it'll take maybe a couple weeks, maybe even a month. Hopefully we figure out hopefully figure out faster than later, especially with two tough teams after this week with the Dolphins and the Ravens. 24-20, I think Burrow will probably get 2 passing touchdowns. Mixon will get a rushing. McPherson will get a field goal. And this defense, it's just not playing good. Yes, we did not give up a ton of points to either the Cowboys or the Steelers. We gave up 20 points to the Cowboys and 23 to the Steelers. But I still don't see how we gave up 20 points to Cooper Rush. It just does not make much sense to me. I know this Steelers offense, I've said it so many times, turnover-free football, the Steelers team's dangerous. I don't care what people say, but I know the Steelers do not have nearly as many offensive yards as we did in the opening in the first game of the season, but they were just able to do pretty much whatever they wanted to. They didn't need to score so many points. They just played pretty much at their own pace and were able to do what they wanted. And I hope that's not the case this week, because this Bengals defense, like I said, has 2 sacks, 0 interceptions. When you're playing Mitchell Trubisky, a guy who is definitely capable of throwing a pick or so a game, and Cooper Rush, 0 interceptions. I don't care if they're passing 10 times a game. You should be able to get a pick between one of those 2 quarterbacks, at least 1 pick within 2 games. I feel like this defense will slowly play better, but like you're saying, this Jets team is fast, and I think they're going to have a nice game plan. I think a lot of it has to determine how much we pressure Flacco. If we pressure Flacco a ton from start to finish, I think this could be a game where maybe the Jets don't score more than 13 points, but I just don't know how we're going to be able to do. T Bloom Entertainment, Steelers offense is in trouble coming from a Steelers fan. Yeah, I'm a Bengal fan. I hate the Steelers. I was kind of high on the Steelers heading into the season. I still think they can be good, but their offensive line should be more consistent, and their play calling just does not really make much sense to me at times. But looking at this Bengals team, 24-20 against the Jets, would you say 23-20? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And back to our friend T, I think Trubisky is going to come in more sooner than later, because I'm sorry, I think Pickett's going to come in more sooner than later at this point, and I think that's going to be a good thing for you guys.
Should be very interesting with the Bengals. We better not be having these same conversations next week. I'm going to be super ticked off if we do. And if we lose next week, like I said, I try not to overreact. If we lose this week, we are in some deep trouble. That's kind of an understatement, honestly. But, I mean, we've been talking here for over an hour. We've pretty much talked all the things Bengals you possibly can. Thanks for everybody tuning in. So, Frank, can you kind of tell some of the listeners who can follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Cincy Bengals Pod. And the name of my podcast is called The Unofficial Bengals Podcast. And you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, definitely go check out, Frank's podcast. Check him out on Instagram and Twitter. The best unbiased Bengals podcast out there. I'm not just saying that. When you look at, some other Bengals podcasts, they're so biased. They kiss the Bengals' butt. You look at Frank's, he tells it how it is. He watches film. He tells you what went wrong in plays and stuff like that. Definitely go check that out. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel or if you've seen my videos before, make sure to like this and subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Like I said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time on the Sports 200 Show.